The breaking wheel was never meant to be hidden away in some dim dungeon. Its horror depended on sunlight, on open air, on the gaze of a crowd. It was a punishment built not only to destroy the condemned, but to instruct everyone who watched. When a man or woman was sentenced to the wheel, their suffering became theater, an execution staged as a civic ritual, sanctioned by state and church alike. The device was as much a stage prop as a weapon, its cruelty magnified by the fact that it unfolded in the center of public life. The wheel itself was ordinary in appearance, a large wooden cartwheel, rim reinforced with iron, spokes radiating from its hub. But in the hands of executioners, it became an emblem of terror. The condemned was tied to it, arms and legs spread across its frame, sometimes lashed to a wooden cross beneath the wheel. The execution ground was often the town square or a hilltop visible for miles. Families, peasants, and nobles gathered, summoned not by curiosity alone, but by duty. Attendance was a lesson. Here was the fate of those who defied law or king. Before the killing began, the ritual of condemnation was read aloud. Crimes were proclaimed, prayers sometimes offered. The authority of ruler and priest fused in a single moment. Then came the display of the wheel, rolled into position with deliberate gravity. Children were hoisted onto shoulders to see. Merchants paused their trade. Soldiers stood guard. The condemned, often stripped to the waist, was exposed before all eyes. Humiliation became the prologue to agony. The act itself was slow and deliberate. Executioners wielded iron clubs or hammers, raising them high before bringing them down upon the victim's limbs. Bones cracked audibly, echoing across the square. Arms snapped at the elbow, legs at the shin, each strike calculated not to kill but to cripple. The crowd did not look away. They were meant to watch, to learn, to absorb the message that rebellion, treason, or murder would end not in swift death, but in prolonged destruction. Children wept, women crossed themselves, men muttered prayers, yet all remained. The ritual was too important to ignore. This was the state's theater of dominance, a demonstration that its reach extended not only to the body but to the soul. The condemned's cries became part of the performance. The wheel itself a pulpit of fear. Every fracture, every scream, carried the lesson deeper into the minds of those who watched. Authority was absolute, and defiance was fatal. After the blows, the body was often interlaced into the spokes of the wheel. The wheel was then raised upright on a pole, the broken figure displayed like a grotesque crucifix. The condemned, sometimes still alive, sometimes already unconscious, hung suspended above the crowd. Birds circled overhead, shadows lengthened, and the onlookers dispersed slowly, carrying the memory of the spectacle with them back to their homes. The display did not end with the execution. The wheel often remained in place for days, the body decaying under sun and rain, a grim landmark on the landscape. Travelers passing by would see it from afar, a skeleton woven into wood, a warning erected against the sky. The wheel was both execution and monument, a reminder that punishment was not only about the condemned, but about the community. Its terror was meant to linger long after the screams had ceased. What made this spectacle so horrifying was its legitimacy. It was not the work of a mob, but of law. Judges pronounced it, priests sanctioned it, kings endorsed it. Families were expected to watch, children to remember. In this way, cruelty was woven into the very fabric of order. The breaking wheel was not an aberration. It was a tradition. Its power lay not only in bones shattered, but in the thousands of eyes that witnessed them break. Thus, the breaking wheel was never only a method of execution. It was a performance of control, a public sermon in wood and iron. It reminded communities that death was not merely the end of life, but could be transformed into a lesson stretched across hours displayed to the sky. The condemned did not die in secret. They died in spectacle, their agony magnified by every eye that watched, and that spectacle was worse than the wheel itself, for it ensured that the terror endured in memory long after the square had fallen silent. The breaking wheel was a tool of precision cruelty. It was not enough that the condemned should die. They had to be dismantled, limb by limb, under the watchful eyes of authority and community alike. The wheel earned its name not merely because it displayed bodies upon its rim, but because it was the stage on which bones were systematically broken. Each strike was calculated, each fracture was intentional. The condemned was undone not by chaos, but by method. The ritual began with binding. The victim was stretched across a wooden frame, limbs splayed, ropes tightening wrists and ankles to keep them immobile. Sometimes a wooden crossbeam was placed beneath them, ensuring that the wheel would hold the body securely as the executioner began his grim task. The executioner, often trained and experienced, carried not a sword or axe, but an iron club, heavy enough to crush bone without ending life too quickly. His role was not to kill swiftly, but to shatter deliberately. The blows followed a grim order. Limbs were struck at their weakest points: shins, forearms, thighs, upper arms. Each swing brought a crack that echoed across the crowd, a sound as horrifying as the screams that followed. The first blows disabled, the next disfigured. Bones splintered, joints dislocated, flesh torn from within by jagged fractures. The executioner paused between strikes, gauging the victim's consciousness, ensuring they remained alive long enough for the spectacle to continue. This was not frenzy, it was procedure. The condemned's body became a map of ruin. Arms twisted unnaturally, legs bent backward, shoulders collapsed inward, yet still they lived, writhing against the ropes, gasping for air. The methodical nature of the breaking magnified the torment. Unlike the sudden certainty of a beheading, the wheel offered no such mercy. Each moment stretched into the next, each fracture a step further into destruction. The condemned was forced to endure not only pain but anticipation, knowing that more blows were still to come. Crowds watched in silence or murmured prayers, their faces pale as the execution unfolded. The ritual of shattering was not only about punishing the guilty, but about impressing upon the living that rebellion or murder would not end with a clean death. The executioner, by breaking bones rather than striking vital organs, ensured that suffering was visible and prolonged. The condemned's cries became part of the performance, a chorus of agony that carried the message more powerfully than any judge's decree. Sometimes, to extend the torment, executioners avoided the chest or head until the very end. Only once the limbs were reduced to useless fragments, hanging limply from torn muscles, would they deliver the final blows to vital areas. In some cases, the condemned was left alive, broken but breathing, interlaced through the spokes of the wheel, to die slowly from shock, exposure, or thirst. Their survival, grotesque and lingering, was proof of the wheel's power to stretch death into a process rather than a moment. The methodical breaking was also a denial of dignity. To be cut down swiftly by sword or axe was a fate reserved for the noble. The wheel was for traitors, murderers, and outcasts, those whom society wished to degrade utterly. By shattering their bodies piece by piece, the executioners symbolically dismantled their humanity, reducing them to broken shapes displayed for all to see. Each fracture was both punishment and erasure, turning the condemned into a living example of what it meant to defy the order of the world. What makes this cruelty especially horrifying is its calculated restraint. The executioner had to know just how hard to strike, just where to land the blow, just how much the human body could endure before it collapsed entirely. Too strong a strike, and death came too quickly. Too weak, and the spectacle lost its force. The art of the wheel lay in prolonging agony, ensuring that bones were broken but life remained. It was a science of suffering, perfected by centuries of use. Thus, the breaking wheel was not merely an execution device, but a ritual of destruction. Its horror lay not in frenzy but in order, not in rage but in precision. It demonstrated how human cruelty could be systematized, how suffering could be inflicted methodically, how death could be stretched out into a long, deliberate unmaking. The wheel shattered not only bones, but the very idea of mercy, replacing it with the cold arithmetic of pain. The breaking wheel was not content with shattering bones. Its cruelty extended beyond the moment of fracture into the long hours, or even days, that followed. Once the victim's body was broken, the execution did not end. Instead, the condemned was left tied to the wheel, hoisted aloft, and abandoned to the elements. The true horror of the wheel was not only in the blows of the iron club, but in what came after. The slow, merciless death of exposure. When the breaking was complete, the shattered body was woven into the spokes of the wheel. Limbs bent backward and threaded through gaps. Arms twisted until bones jutted at grotesque angles. Legs looped unnaturally around wood. The executioner arranged the victim like a grotesque sculpture, ensuring that their form was both visible and dehumanized. Sometimes the body was lashed with ropes to hold it in place. Sometimes it was left dangling, suspended by its own broken limbs. Then the wheel was lifted upright and mounted on a pole, towering above the crowd like a macabre monument. The condemned was often still alive at this point. Bones broken, flesh torn, consciousness flickering. They hung exposed under the open sky. Birds circled overhead, sensing weakness. Flies gathered quickly, crawling into wounds. The sun beat down, drying blood into crust. At night, cold winds cut into fevered flesh, while rain soaked the body and chilled it to the bone. Death did not arrive quickly. It came through thirst, starvation, shock, or infection, dragging the victim across hours, sometimes days, of agony. Eyewitness accounts speak of victims surviving for extraordinary lengths of time. Some writhed and moaned for 2 or 3 days, their cries echoing across fields or squares until their voices finally failed. Others lingered in silence, too weak to speak, their suffering visible only in twitching fingers or shallow breaths. The community watched, sometimes returning day after day to witness the slow unraveling of a human life. The spectacle was not meant to be swift. It was meant to endure, carving terror into memory with every passing hour. This prolonged exposure transformed the wheel into a symbol of total domination. It was not enough to kill the condemned. They had to be displayed as warnings. The raised wheel stood like a gallows, magnified, visible from a distance, its broken figure a message to travelers and villagers alike. The victim became a signpost of authority. Their suffering stretched not only across time but across the landscape. To pass by the wheel was to be reminded of the price of disobedience. The slowness of death also robbed the condemned of any dignity in dying. A swift execution allowed for final words, prayers, or gestures of defiance. The wheel denied all of these. Suspended in agony, the victim could not speak clearly, could not move, could not even choose the moment of their death. They were reduced to waiting, powerless while their bodies succumbed inch by inch. In this way, the wheel was not only execution, it was humiliation, extending suffering until identity itself seemed to dissolve. For communities, the memory of these lingering deaths was more powerful than any decree or law. Children grew up hearing the cries of wheel victims in the night. Farmers passed the grotesque silhouettes of broken bodies on hillsides. Merchants recounted the horror in distant towns. The legend of the wheel spread because it was designed to linger, not only in flesh but in memory. Its cruelty echoed long after the victim's final breath. What makes this aspect so disturbing is how deliberately it was planned. The wheel's function was not simply to kill, but to prolong, to deny mercy, to transform the condemned into living warnings. Exposure was not an accident of delay. It was part of the sentence. Judges ordered it. Executioners carried it out. Communities accepted it. Death on the wheel was a ritual of time, where every moment of agony was as carefully orchestrated as the blows that preceded it. Thus, the breaking wheel was not only a machine of violence, but a machine of slowness. It weaponized the elements, sun, wind, rain, birds, insects, against the condemned, turning nature itself into a torturer. In its deliberate prolonging of death, it revealed the chilling ingenuity of medieval justice, that the worst punishment was not pain alone, but the endless waiting for death to arrive. The breaking wheel was never simply a way to kill. It was a declaration, a message hammered into bone and burned into memory. Its brutality was reserved for crimes that authorities deemed especially dangerous: treason, rebellion, banditry, or murder of the most notorious kind. The pain it inflicted was horrific, but its true power lay in its infamy. The wheel was designed to terrify, to remind entire communities that certain acts would be punished, not just with death, but with the worst death imaginable. In medieval and early modern Europe, justice was inseparable from spectacle. Executions were public sermons of authority, intended to deter more than to punish. The breaking wheel stood at the pinnacle of this philosophy. To be sentenced to it was to be singled out as an enemy, not only of the state but of society itself. Lesser criminals might hang, but those who threatened order most profoundly were condemned to the wheel. Its use said as much about fear as it did about guilt. The trial itself often hinted at the wheel's looming presence. Judges pronounced the sentence in solemn tones, invoking law and divine will. The condemned knew what it meant. Not merely death, but degradation, torment, and display. The community knew as well. Whispers spread through villages and towns, drawing people to the square when the day of execution arrived. Curiosity mingled with dread. Parents brought children, not for entertainment, but as education. This is what happens to those who defy the order of the world. The executioner's methodical breaking of limbs was part of the deterrent. Each crack of bone was a warning shot fired into the crowd. Each scream was a sermon louder than any priest's. The condemned's destruction was not private, it was shared. Every blow reverberated across the community, telling them that rebellion, banditry, or heresy would end in the same spectacle. The victim was punished, but the lesson was for the living. The wheel's infamy grew precisely because it was so excessive. People expected punishment for crime. But the wheel exceeded expectation, stretching death into hours or days, raising bodies into grotesque monuments. This extremity magnified fear. Hanging might be quick. The stake, though terrifying, ended in smoke. But the wheel, it was unpredictable, lingering, unmerciful. It was to face annihilation without dignity, a fate worse than death itself. The prospect of such an end silenced many who might otherwise have defied the state. Authorities understood this and wielded the wheel strategically. They did not need to employ it daily. Its rarity enhanced its impact. The very name of the wheel carried such weight that communities trembled at its mention. Stories of past executions were retold for generations, each retelling sharpening the device's reputation. The wheel's terror was cumulative, layered by memory and rumor, growing greater than the device itself. Its deterrent effect extended far beyond the immediate crowd. Travelers carried tales of wheel executions from one region to another. Merchants spread stories along trade routes. Chroniclers recorded them in grim detail. Soon, the wheel became a European symbol of ultimate punishment, feared even by those who had never seen one. It was not simply a local instrument of justice, but a continental legend of deterrence. This legend served rulers well. In an age where armies were small and rebellions frequent, fear was a powerful weapon. The wheel, by making examples of a few, subdued the many. It was not swords or walls alone that preserved order. It was the memory of suffering carved into the minds of subjects. The wheel, in its infamy, became a shield of governance, ensuring obedience without the need for constant violence. And so the breaking wheel endured for centuries, not because it was efficient, but because it was infamous. Its cruelty guaranteed that no one forgot it, and that memory became the most effective deterrent of all. The condemned were destroyed, but the living were controlled. That was the wheel's true legacy, not just the breaking of bodies, but the bending of societies beneath the weight of fear. The breaking wheel has long since disappeared from the scaffolds of Europe, its wooden frames rotted away, its iron rims rusted. Yet its memory endures, lingering like a ghost in chronicles, paintings, and folklore. More than many other punishments, the wheel carved itself into the imagination, surviving not just as history, but as symbol. Its legacy is not simply the bodies it shattered, but the way it came to embody cruelty itself. To speak of the wheel today is to evoke one of the darkest chapters of human justice. Contemporaries ensured this memory would last. Chroniclers recorded wheel executions in grim detail, describing the methodical breaking of bones, the cries of the condemned, the raised display of shattered bodies left for birds and weather. These accounts were often tinged with moral lessons, presented as proof of divine justice or warnings against sin. But behind the rhetoric, the horror shone through. Readers could not escape the image of a human body reduced to fragments upon the spokes of a wheel, life stretched out into agony before an audience of thousands. Artists, too, immortalized the spectacle. Woodcuts and paintings depicted execution scenes. Wheels raised on poles, victims' limbs twisted into impossible positions. These images circulated widely, sometimes as illustrations in pamphlets, sometimes as moral tableaux hung in homes. They reinforced the reputation of the wheel, ensuring that even those who had never witnessed it firsthand could picture its brutality. The wheel became not just an event, but an icon, reproduced endlessly in ink and paint. Folklore wove its own stories around the wheel. In some regions, hills where executions had been carried out were said to be haunted by the cries of victims. Birds that fed on the bodies were whispered to carry curses. Children were warned to behave lest they end up on the wheel. Over time, the device entered language itself, becoming shorthand for the most gruesome fate imaginable. The memory of the wheel persisted not only in records, but in everyday speech, folklore, and imagination. Even after the Enlightenment ushered in debates about cruelty and justice, the wheel's reputation endured. Philosophers and reformers cited it as evidence of humanity's capacity for barbarity, a relic of a darker age that must be left behind. Yet even as societies abolished it, they could not erase it. The wheel lingered as a reminder of what had been considered acceptable, sanctioned by law and faith, carried out in public squares. Its memory became a cautionary tale for later generations. Modern readers and audiences continue to recoil at its mention. History books describe it as one of the worst executions ever devised. Documentaries present it as the pinnacle of medieval cruelty, and fiction invokes it whenever ultimate suffering must be imagined. The wheel no longer turns, yet it still grinds in the imagination. Its cruelty has outlived its practice, carried forward as symbol rather than reality. This endurance speaks to the power of memory. Many punishments have been forgotten. Scourges, stocks, even some forms of hanging. But the breaking wheel endures because it fused spectacle, suffering, and symbolism in a way that transcended its own time. It was not only a device of execution, but a cultural event, a lesson carved into the minds of communities. Its memory remains because it was designed to remain through spectacle and storytelling alike. And perhaps that is the most disturbing legacy of the wheel, that cruelty can survive long after the device itself is gone. The shattered bodies it once displayed are dust, but their agony has been preserved in ink, image, and imagination. The wheel reminds us that human beings are capable not only of inventing such punishments, but of keeping them alive through memory, passing their horror down through centuries. The breaking wheel may no longer stand in town squares, but its shadow still falls across history. It remains a symbol of death worse than most can imagine, a reminder of how societies once turned suffering into law, spectacle into justice, cruelty into memory. That memory is its true legacy, one that continues to haunt long after the last wheel was broken apart.